He knelt and touched the floor where the turn mark was darkest. A smear came away on his fingertip that wasn't charcoal. He lifted it to his nose. Pear glaze again, sweet, everywhere it shouldn't be. He stood and followed the corridor's length by feel and memory. The wiring diagram on the maintenance locker door had a new crease where a thumb had smoothed it while thinking. The fuse puller bore a single fresh half-moon of clean plastic in the flower print, like a tooth lost from a smile. Someone had lifted it, breathed, set it back. He returned to the gallery. Arguments in the red room. At 12:41, voices trembled down the stairs. Lydia and Clara, mid-whisper, too sharp to be friendship. "You think he made me into this," Lydia said. "You think your pearls make you innocent." "I think your knife is a costume you enjoy," Clara said. "Men like Victor feed women like you scraps, and you call it truth." Rowan stopped long enough outside the door to hear the floor confess. 2 sets of bare feet, one pacing, one planted. Fabric rasped on fabric, the small click of a jewel, the larger click of a jaw set. He knocked. The argument cut off, the way words cut when a teacher enters the room. "Everything all right?" "And how would we define that?" Clara asked. "Unmurdered," Rowan said. "For now," Lydia murmured. He left them to it. He had never seen 2 people less suited to share one pillow without dreaming of ropes. Billiard room confession. He looked in on Graham and Miles. The green table had collected the last of the day's heat and gave back comfort. Miles sat on the arm of a leather chair, a man allergic to stillness. Graham sat in the chair itself, a man married to it. Rowan gestured at the ashtray on the sill. "Feel like pretending again?" Graham didn't bother. "I stepped out after you set your rules," he said. "1 draw, 2 perhaps." His voice softened to the edge of confession. "I needed the air to smell different." "Why tonight?" Rowan asked. "You signed your ruin weeks ago." "I didn't know until I read it," Graham said, looking at his hands, which had been careful to look like other men's hands their whole lives. He brought the papers like an old friend. It was a trick. You don't see a knife until the light catches it. Miles let out a breath that shook. "He wanted to watch us collapse," he said. "I think that was the art." Rowan filed the word collapse and left them to the green table's mercy. Anders. He found Anders in the hall, awake, eyes open but looking at some middle distance only he could see. Evelyn dozed beside him, a hand on his wrist like a pulse she was willing to share. "You hear anything?" Rowan asked quietly. "Someone walked the kitchen," Anders said. "Not a heavy tread, not Miss Voss's quick step. Someone careful." "Which direction?" "From the pantry to the hall and back," Anders said. "Twice, then nothing." Rowan nodded. "Good, keep listening." Anders swallowed. "Detective? If it was me, if I had to catch a bad fox, I would set a snare and let it tug." "You're walking the snare." Rowan's mouth moved like the idea wanted to be a smile. "It's the job," he said, and meant both kinds of job, the one written on his card and the one the house had hired him for. A second bell. At 1:07, the bell on the hidden room's door gave a single muffled ting, like a laugh caught inside a hand. Rowan was moving before the sound finished being itself. He took the service corridor in 3 strides and a caution. The silk he tied to the bell's clapper had been pulled hard enough to cut itself. The door stood just off its jamb, a whisper of a gap. He did not push it at once. He knelt and looked under with his penlight, a sliver of floor, the toe of a shoe, still. Not Anders's boot, not a narrow heel. A man's evening shoe, polished to reflect even very small truths. "Mr. Tate," Rowan said softly through the scene, and the toe flinched. Then the door opened a hand's breadth and Graham's face appeared, bloodless in the light. "I heard a noise," Graham said. His voice realized it was doing the wrong thing even as it did it. "I thought—" "You thought to secure evidence you didn't want me to see," Rowan said, and reached past him, clean as a cat, to take from the table a folded page that hadn't been there earlier. One of Victor's anxious confessions, the word variance under Graham's name now boxed and underlined twice, a fresh pressure marking the charcoal shine. "Return it," Rowan said. Graham took the paper back with the helpless dignity of a man who has been told to place his hand flat on a desk. He put it where Rowan pointed. His cuff brushed the table. A pale dust bloomed against navy wool. Flour from the dumbwaiter sill, Rowan's flour, where it had no business, unless Graham had been there too. "Out," Rowan said, but gently, as if to a student who needed to fail a test before he could learn anything. He watched Graham go and did not follow him yet. He walked the room with his light again. The studio knife was still on its peg. The slashes on the canvases had not multiplied. But on the near wall, beneath the scrawl, "The house keeps their lies," a second hand had written, in a cleaner, tighter script, "So do the people." He put his finger against the new line, and Gray came away, fresh. "Noted," he said to the room, because if Victor could speak to walls, Rowan would too. Midnight visit. He returned to the gallery and sat with his blanket and his notebook and his painted torch. He closed his eyes and let the noises of the house stack again, the radiator's hymn, the wind's organ, the clock's pulse, the sigh of a sleeper that rose and fell beneath all of it. He did not pretend surprise when Clara arrived. She came without shoes, the pearls at her throat somehow louder in the hush than her breath. She did not start when she saw him. She had counted on him. "Can't sleep?" Rowan said. "I'm practicing not sleeping," she said, and turned to the canvas that had painted her strangled by her own adornment. "He never painted me," she said. "He painted a story he told himself about me." "He did that for everyone," Rowan said. "Not you," she said, and nodded at the painted torch. "He painted what you do." Rowan thought of the word liars and the little smile Victor's hand had put under it. "He painted a job," he said, "not a person." She stepped closer to the easel and looked down at the scrawled, "One will remain." "He wanted us to devour each other," she said, and her voice made the line into something more cursed than prophecy. "Only if you obey," Rowan said. She looked at him finally. "Do you believe I killed him?" "I believe you're better at rage than panic," Rowan said. Tonight took both. A small sound in the hall made both heads turn. Clara's eyes flicked sideways, then back. Her hand rose to her necklace and then fell again like a decision. "If you have something to give me," Rowan said, "give it now." She hesitated, then reached into the pocket stitched into the seam of her gown, a small, clever pocket for small, clever thefts, and placed on the table a key he had not seen before. Tiny, brass, old. "Victor's desk," she said. "The little lock inside the big lock." "You didn't want to share this earlier," Rowan said. "I didn't want to share it with them," she said, and the word "them" contained in it a courtyard of people who had entered her house and made it not hers. He took the key. "Does it make you innocent?" "It makes me finished," she said. "You'll forgive me if I want more than that," Rowan said. "You'll forgive me nothing," Clara said, but there was something in it that might have been something else in a different century. She left as she came, a whisper of silk, the pearls speaking in the way hard things do in the night, not loud but undeniable. The drawer inside the drawer. The key fit the secondary lock in Victor's desk like a memory. A small drawer sprang with a tired sigh. Inside, a packet of letters bound with twine, a photograph of Victor younger by 20 years, his arm around Anders, both of them in front of a sapling that had become the oak now blackening against winter. A note in Victor's hurried hand. "When I cannot say it aloud, let the next thing be louder than me." Beneath the note, a thumb drive. Rowan turned it in his fingers. It had been labeled once, the ink rubbed away by worry. He pocketed it next to the micro SD card. 2 mouths for the same story. One physical, one digital. If the second matched the first, he had not just a stage, but a script. He locked the drawer again and pressed his palm against the wood once, a ritual made of nothing but respect for the dead and contempt for their choices. The last hour. At 1:49, the wind changed and pressed its palm to the north windows. The house changed key to match. Anders turned in his sleep and woke and didn't say he had. At 1:57, Lydia laughed once from the red room like a woman who had told herself a better joke than anyone in the world would ever give her. Clara did not. At 2:06, Miles knocked into the billiard table in a dream, and then, ashamed of even that, apologized to a man asleep and got no answer. At 2:11, the regulator clock in the hall ticked through its corrected minute and did not chirr. The wax Rowan had placed on its hub was still whole. At 2:18, the gallery keypad's ash smudge sprouted a half-moon clean where a finger pressed gently, someone testing without changing, the way people touch relics before they call it prayer. At 2:23, the dumbwaiter bell did not ring, which was its own kind of confession. At 2:31, Rowan wrote a sentence he did not like in his notebook. 2 hands can be the same person. He got up and walked the lodge one more time. The service corridor smelled like a cellar remembers the first apple. The hidden door held fast, bell still quiet. The flower crescent on the dumbwaiter sill gleamed like a pale moon and held its new scuff. The fuse puller had not moved again. The gas valve sat at honest right angles to the line. He came back through the foyer and stopped. The knife sunburst on the wall still showed its missing tooth, one empty ray where the bone-handled fox belonged. But the glass over the display had been touched. He could see his own fingers' earlier print in the dust, and next to it, a fresh arc, longer, lower. Someone shorter had reached, or someone taller had reached while crouching, which would be a dangerous way to borrow a weapon if you expected company. He turned and found Anders awake and looking at the display too. "I used to polish those," Anders said, and his voice had softness in it like he'd been allowed to say it in another life. He liked to see himself in them. "Do you?" Rowan asked. Anders shook his head. "I like to see the snow on trees." Rowan believed him. He moved back to the gallery, the hand in the jar. He was almost to the doorway when a soft clink from within broke the room's patience. He stepped to the threshold and stopped, because men who catch foxes don't chase. They let foxes come to the bait. The shape at the side table was careful, precise. A hand, gloved, moving a bell jar off a vial, the same vial he'd set there earlier to watch. The hand pinched the glass by its lip, the way someone who understands fingerprints does. The bell jar turned, hovered, set. The vial's shadow moved. "Leave it," Rowan said, and the hand stilled. Evelyn stood beside the table, face calm, eyes tired. She looked at him and at the vial, and then at her own gloved fingers, which she slipped out of the kid leather like a skin. "I wanted to be sure it was still here," she said. "It is," Rowan said. "And now it knows you know." "It already knew," she said, and for the first time something like anger broke the surface of her voice. "It has known all night." "It," Rowan repeated. "The person who imagines themselves as hunger," she said, and it wasn't metaphor, it was diagnosis. "Who?" Rowan asked, and knew she would not give him a name. Not yet, not without more. She didn't. "The same who cannot stand a closed door," she said. "The same who likes the glass to show their face back." "Victor?" he asked. "Still dead," she said. "Graham?" "Too proud to crawl," she said, and the answer was gentler than the suspicion. "Clara?" "Too theatrical for chemicals," she said. "Lydia?" "Too in love with the truth to sweeten it," she said, and smiled thinly. "Even when it would help." "Miles?" Evelyn looked at the vial. "Too loud." "Anders?" Rowan asked, not because he believed it, but because a good doctor checks every reflex. "Too much outside," she said. "Killers of this kind live in the middle of rooms and call it modesty." "Then who?" Rowan said again, and the storm put its ear to the glass because it, too, wanted a name. Evelyn exhaled. "You already know," she said. "You are collecting proofs to soothe yourself, not the truth to find it." He wanted to argue. He wanted to be offended. He wanted to be a man who didn't need a preacher to tell him his own text. He settled for the only honest response he had left. "Stay where I can see you," he said. "If I shout, shout louder." She nodded once and went to sit under the painted version of herself, behind bars she didn't wear. The pull. At 2:53, the house changed. Not sound, pressure, as if the storm outside had stepped closer and put its shoulder to the same wall. The radiators hiccuped. The hall fire coughed. The gallery shadows leaned a fraction into the room. Rowan did not need a bell to tell him someone had pulled the fuse. He moved fast, but not running. The people who run get seen by the wrong eyes. The maintenance locker door stood open a width. The fuse puller lay where he'd set it, but the line of flour under it had 2 new half moons. Lift, set, lift, set. The breaker for dining was down. The rest held. He slid the switch up. Lights woke like they'd been embarrassed. He listened. A footstep, soft, then softer, then a whisper. He went back by the long spine. At the service panel door, the charcoal line at the threshold showed a new drag, the ball of a foot in a rush. He followed it toward the hidden room. The bell on the inner knob had been cut silent. Cut, not unwound. His silk thread snapped and pocketed. He smiled again. Panic makes tidy people sloppy. He pushed the door in and the dark inside pushed back. "Mr. Tate," Rowan said, because it was a habit now, and because if you say a name enough, the right person will flinch. No one answered. The room was empty. But the far wall had been touched. His light caught a finger smear down the words, "So do the people," as if someone had wiped their hand there in thought or irritation. He backed out and closed the door quietly, then turned the trap's bell back on with a new thread. If the fox needed to circle, let it ring. The glass. He took the pictures from the dining room, carried them into the gallery, and set them side by side on the pedestal. He poured a thumb's worth of each into 2 glasses, set both on the linen. One left a faint charcoal kiss where it touched, the other left nothing. He held them under his nose and smelled nothing he trusted. He did not drink. He took a dropper from Evelyn's bag, she didn't pretend not to carry one, and set a bead from each onto a strip torn from the blank canvas edge he'd pocketed earlier as waste. The glaze in the pores of one bead beaded and then broke. The other soaked, then held. Chemistry didn't confess, but it recognized kin. "Which is which?" Evelyn asked from the doorway, voice low. "The one with the kiss," Rowan said. "It's mine." "And the other?" "The one someone moved," he said. "Once in the dumbwaiter, once back into the room. And now, perhaps, a 3rd time." Evelyn watched him, then the glasses. "You could make them drink," she said, not endorsing, only predicting. "I could," he said, "but I prefer my killers alive." He corked both and set them apart like quarreling saints. The last footstep. At 3:06, the storm stilled a fraction, and he heard it. A footstep, bare, just inside the gallery door. Light enough to be a woman, careful enough to be someone who preferred not to be. He didn't turn. "Do you like your portrait?" he asked the air, and the air decided to be Lydia. "It's dramatic," she said, "but wrong about the knife." "You held a pen like a blade," he said. She moved into his peripheral vision, notebook in hand, hair loose now, coat thrown over a nightdress like armor you forget halfway through. "Everyone assumes critics want the blood," she said. "We want the cut." "Who pulled the fuse?" he asked. "Someone who likes attention," she said. "Help me," he said, and meant it. "What did I miss?" She didn't smirk. "You think the camera is a window humans look through," she said. "But in this house it was a mirror. Every person who stared into it told you what they needed." "Clara," he said. "She needed to be seen," Lydia said. "And punished. The camera suits both." "Graham," he said. "He needed absolution," she said. He looked at a shroud to beg it not to become a curtain. "Evelyn," he said. "She needed control," Lydia said. "She gave him water, and then gave you the word water." Anders, he said. He needed to be useful, she said. He adjusted lights. Miles, he said. He needed a father, she said softly, and that was the only time her voice broke. And you? He asked. She looked at her notebook like it was a passport to a life where her observations didn't make her a suspect. I needed to know the truth, she said, and I always hate it when I find it. He waited. She didn't give him a name. A good critic ends at the edge of the last sentence and lets the reader fall. Dawn's edge. He felt the night begin to stain toward morning. No light yet, only the idea of it. The storm had stopped breathing against the glass and now only lay there, sleeping like a thing that had eaten and was content. He stood, every joint a small report, and looked at the house as a whole being one last time, the way cold had built in corners, the way breath had written itself on panes and been wiped, the way a wrong clock had decided to keep right time simply because someone told it must. Enough, he said, and the word sounded like both mercy and verdict. He woke them in order. Miles first, because boys hate mornings. Graham next, because men hate mornings more. Clara and Lydia together, because girls who fought at night look alike in the gray. Anders, because he was already awake. Evelyn last, because doctors will take the last watch over the bodies if you let them. He brought them to the dining room and poured nothing into no glasses and told them not to touch the some things he had left out to be touched. Then he walked them back to the gallery and set them under their doubles like saints facing their painted miracles. This is the last night you'll spend together, he said. Morning will have other rooms for each of you, but we're not leaving this one until I've said the truth in your hearing. He set the sheath and the vial on the pedestal and put his hand on the bracelet as if it were a book. He looked at the painting where Victor had scrawled, "One will remain," and refused to let the prophecy pick his ending for him. You killed a man twice, Rowan said, to the room, to the storm, to the painted faces, to the 6 pairs of eyes that hated the truth in equal measure. First with sweetness, then with spectacle. He looked at the one who had stared into cameras and into mirrors and into other people until the world stared back and said yes. And you, he said, and didn't say the name yet because good endings take the breath first. Almost killed the rest of us out of impatience when nerve began to tremble. He took his hand from the bracelet and pointed to the smallest thing in the room. The thing that had told him what he needed to know because all liars forget the smallest things talk. The thread, Rowan said. The one you took from my trap instead of breaking. You just couldn't help making the cut clean. He finally said the name. Clara. The storm did not gasp. People did. Lydia made a sound like joy that hurt. Graham said, of course, as if he had arrived at the same platform by a different train. Miles didn't say anything at all. He sat down like a man who has heard the first sentence of a lifelong argument. Anders closed his eyes. Evelyn opened hers wider. Clara did not move. I don't use knives in the dark, she said. No, Rowan said, and his voice held the only kindness the night owed anyone. You used water first. He touched the glass with no kiss of charcoal. And a fuse when the room refused to give you silence. The knife was grace, his and yours. He waited for the house to decide whether it would hold. Morning came into the windows as a paler dark. Sit, Rowan said, and Clara did, and the pearls lay against her collarbone like a sentence that would be read into the record at noon. Part 9. The confession that wasn't. No one moved. The gallery absorbed the name like a room that had expected it and still didn't like the taste. Clara Harland sat without flinching. Pearls lay calm against her collarbone. The word Clara still hung in the air like dust in a shaft of early gray. Rowan Hale didn't look away. You dosed the water before dinner, he said, voice even. You touched the service corridors you swore you never would. You pulled the fuse when the room would not give you quiet. The knife came after. Clara's mouth discovered the smallest smile. After, she repeated. How precise for a man who deals in atmospheres. You're precise, Rowan said. You like clean cuts. You plucked my silk thread instead of breaking it. You left a perfect circle on the fuse puller. You stared into a camera you assumed would be watching. This is your work. Preparation, angle, nerve. Miles broke. You killed him, he said, voice shredded. You. Clara didn't even turn. He killed himself long ago, she said. I set the table. Evelyn stepped a half pace forward. What did you use? Clara's eyes flicked to the two corked glasses. Something bitter dressed as sweet, she said. Victor loved contradictions. I dressed one for him. Rowan didn't blink. Cyanogenic, he said. Evelyn's gaze stayed steady. You risked the dose in a room full of people? Clara's smile thinned. He would never drink what anyone else touched, she said. We were all props to him. He would not sip from our cups. Graham exhaled a slow, ugly breath. Poison is a coward's instrument. Spoken like a man who sneaks to read wills in the dark, Lydia said, almost gently. Rowan touched the vial bag. And the knife? Clara's jaw worked once. The knife is not mine, she said. I don't perform in pitch black. That is the point, Rowan said. You needed the dark for the fuse, quiet, cut, reset, and not for the blade. Someone else used your storm to make theater. Miles ran a hand over his face as if he could rub a different night out of his skin. Someone else? He swung toward Graham, toward Anders, toward every shadow that might accept blame just to get them to morning. Who? Not yet, Rowan said. We finished with the hand that started it. He set the bracelet on the pedestal beside the vial and the sheath. The pale silk ribbon looked suddenly obscene among tools. You lied when you said it was gone, Rowan said quietly. He kept the note. That wasn't about jewelry. It was about power. Clara's eyes sharpened. It was about a night 10 years ago when I told him I had a choice, she said. He reminded me every time he touched that note with his eyes that I didn't. What choice? Lydia asked, softer than she spoke to anyone. Stay, Clara said, or leave with nothing. Miles flinched like he'd been struck twice. He kept you. He kept all of us, Clara said. Some of us liked our cages better. She looked at the shrouded, now unveiled painting, at the line, one will remain scrawled like a curse. He wanted an ending where we devoured one another on cue. I decided not to give him the applause. Her gaze slid to the glasses. I chose a quiet mercy and ruined it with a moment of fear. You lowered the breakers, Rowan said. Yes, Clara said, because he would never fall from a chair without witnesses. I thought, if the room is dark, he can go without spectacle. She looked at the empty head chair under linen. I was wrong about the appetite of men who love drama. Silence found the corners. The wind had gentled to a breath that only moved curtains. Rowan made himself ask the ugliest question. Did you mean to kill him? Clara's eyes did not move from the pedestal. I meant to end him, she said. The difference is for priests. Evelyn's voice carried the precise cruelty of medicine. You dosed enough for certainty? I dosed enough for kindness, Clara said. That is not always the same. Rowan believed the structure of that, if not the ethics. He let it sit. You sent the vial and sheath down the dumbwaiter. Clara nodded once. The house has veins. I learned them. He built them to hide his appetites. And the gas line? Rowan asked. Clara's head turned. No, she said, genuine surprise finally interrupting poise. I wanted witnesses to live, to ensure I didn't have to invent a confession for a courtroom. I am not afraid of truth. I am afraid of his version of it. She glanced at the painting again. He would have called even this act a collaboration. Miles' chair scraped. You killed my father, he said again, but the anger had thinned into something worse, grief trying on certainty. Rowan didn't let the room calcify. He lifted the thumb drive Clara's key had bought him and held it up. Victor left more than paint, he said. He left a voice. He crossed to the study's old desktop, slid the drive into a port, and waited. A folder appeared. Dicta, last week. Files marched by date. He clicked the most recent. Victor Harland's voice poured into the room with the intimacy of late-night radio, too close, too pleased with itself. And so I will give them what they want. They want a stage. I will give them a stage. They want a villain. I will play one last time. But the painting is not mine. It is theirs. Rowan will see it. He will make it say what I need said. Clara will lie. She lies beautifully when she wants to be kind. Graham will sniff like a dog who lost his bone. Miles will throw himself against the walls of a cage whose door is open. Lydia will smile when it hurts. Evelyn will? The voice paused, reconsidered. Evelyn will tell the truth even when it ruins her. The file clicked off. Rowan opened another. The same voice earlier canted in triumph.